I am a licensed therapist and, like you said, an anger expert. And the reason is because I believe anger is probably the most misunderstood emotion
Yeah.
among all of humanity. And unfortunately, even among the therapeutic community. A lot of therapists kind of don't really know what to do with anger. And that is especially, tragic.
Welcome to the Audacious Living Podcast, hosted by my man, Audley Stevenson, the Odd Man.
Greetings and salutations. Welcome to the Audacious Living Podcast, where our mission is to help you live your best audacious life ever. It's always a pleasure to be here sharing insights and inspiration through conversations. And I really appreciate you taking time out of your day to join us on this journey of self-discovery and empowerment. Whether you're tuning in for personal growth, motivation, or just a good conversation, you're definitely at the right place. Now, imagine your emotions as a dashboard in your car. Each light represents a different feeling, with anger being a warning signal flashing brightly when something is amiss. Just like you wouldn't ignore the engine light, you shouldn't dismiss your anger. It serves as a vital purpose, including areas of your life that need attention, healing, or change. However, to fully understand this signal, we must delve deeper into our past, much like checking under the hood to uncover the root of the issue. Inner child work is essential here, as it allows us to address the childhood experiences that shape our current emotional responses. Recognizing anger as a secondary emotion linked to feelings of betrayal or abandonment is crucial for emotional healing. By communicating effectively using I statements, we can navigate these feelings in our relationships. And finally, the journey of self-forgiveness is pivotal for our emotional growth, allowing us to release the burdens of our past and embrace a more empowered future. Today, we're thrilled to introduce Bronwyn Schweigerdt. She's a licensed therapist and expert in anger. Bronwyn specializes in helping individuals heal their relationships with anger, which she believes is one of the most misunderstood emotions. With her extensive experience in therapy, Bronwyn has developed powerful insights into the connection between anger, shame, and emotional well-being. Her podcast, Angry at the Right Things, offers practical tools and exercises aimed at fostering a healthier relationship with anger and promoting emotional resilience. Bronwyn's expertise in navigating the complexities of anger make her an ideal guest for this episode. Now, as we explore the themes of misunderstood emotions, inner child work, emotional triggers, effective communication, and self-forgiveness, her insights will guide us toward a deeper understanding of how to transform anger into a force for good in our lives. So now that we've got you all set, let's not be angry. Let's turn to our conversation with Bronwyn. Enjoy. Good afternoon, Bronwyn. Thank you for joining me here today on the Audacious Living Podcast. I appreciate you for taking the time to be here. Thank you for doing this.
You're welcome, Audley. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, it's great to be able to engage in conversations that will assist individuals to live this best audacious life that we talk about here on this podcast. And a big part of that certainly is recognizing that we all have our sort of individual journeys that we have to go down, and and sometimes we get ourselves in trouble because we compare journeys and whose pathway, and not recognizing that what's on ours is our pathway, and what's in front of us are obstacles that we've got to confront and deal with, and the comparisons it gets hazardous, if you will. But we certainly we certainly encourage individuals again to take that first step, go after that first, whether the dream, or be bold or courageous in their actions, and that's a lot of what our focus is. As a psychotherapist, I know that you spend some time as you call yourself, an anger expert. And I think anger is an emotion that we all can relate to, some more than others, right? But it's an emotion that belongs to us nonetheless. It's really about how we use it, or work with it, if you will, I think is maybe a way I'll put that. I'm going to stop talking for a moment and invite you in to give you an opportunity to introduce yourself to our audience, and speak a little bit about the work that you do, and what's got you to the point that you're up to now.
Yeah. So I am a licensed therapist and, like you said, an anger expert. And the reason is because I believe anger is probably the most misunderstood emotion
Yeah.
among all of humanity. And unfortunately, even among the therapeutic community, a lot of therapists kind of don't really know what to do with anger. And that is especially, tragic. So I have this podcast um, largely about anger, but a lot of it's about shame as well, because I think they
Okay.
really go hand in hand.
Mhm.
And my goal is really just to help people to heal their relationship with anger. And, we all have anger and we all have a relationship with anger, but it's not a
Mhm.
healthy relationship. Very few people have a healthy relationship with their anger. And a lot of us were raised to feel ashamed of our anger. So that, cuts us off. That makes us feel like we can't have any anger, or if we show any anger, we feel ashamed. Some of us are afraid that if we show any anger, we're going to be abandoned or rejected
Right.
by that person. And so we carry all that with us, and that, makes us kind of have a dysfunctional relationship with our anger. But basically, I see anger as the light on the dashboard of our emotional car that's saying,
Okay.
something's off, and let's stop and look under the hood so we can bring about repair to something that's off. So if we shift, how we view anger to, oh, it's a symbol, it's a sign, it's a barometer that something's off. I'm not off, but something in my life is off, and I need to find out more so I can bring it to resolution, then that's the first step. And when we feel angry, instead of
Mhm.
pretending like we're not, maybe, and then it builds and builds and then we explode, or we end up, it leaks out at someone else who's actually not the true source of the anger. It could be our pet, it could be our
Right.
partner, it could be our
Right.
kids, whoever. um it could be us, because I believe that anger, Freud is famous for saying that depression is anger turned inward, and I believe anxiety is also anger turn inward. So we can hold it just in our bodies, and then it affects us and it makes us sick. It can also make us sick, as in migraines, digestive disorders, insomnia, um, all kinds of what we call somatic issues. So,
Right.
so if we learn to just have a healthy relationship, let's say I start to just go, okay, I can feel angry right now. I don't have to do anything about it, but I can just feel it in my body. Where do I feel it? A lot of times we feel it in our chest. Okay, I feel it right here in my chest. And I'm just going to put my hand in my chest and say, I hear you. I hear you're angry, and this is valid. And it's valid to feel, and it's okay. And then that's kind of our step number one, is just knowing it's there for a good purpose.
Mhm.
It's there to give us wisdom.
Mhm.
And then from that, we can say, okay, what does this anger need? Well, usually what our anger needs is either a boundary with someone, assertive speech with someone, just kind of say, hey, oddly, we said we'd meet at 11 and it's 11:20 and this is the third time that's happened, right? So that's assertive speech. I don't have to
Right.
show anger. You
Right.
don't feel like I'm angry, but I know my anger is being channeled out of my body in a healthy way by kind of, bringing about assertiveness, and then accountability. So that those are kind of the three ways that we learn to be responsible for our anger.
Out of curiosity, and you mentioned earlier that anger is one of the most understood emotions. Why do you think that is? Why is it that we have a problem with being angry, or even saying that we're angry? Like, I'm just curious what your thoughts are.
Well, I would say, as a therapist, I'm pretty Freudian. So I believe and I see, oftentimes that our parents, they don't like a little kid who's angry, because that makes, and I've been a parent, probably you're a parent, probably a lot of people listening are parents. It's no fun having a kid angry at you. So it's just much more convenient to, either give that child the silent treatment, but then what that does to the child is they feel abandoned. So they
Mm.
equate their assertiveness or their boundary, their anger with abandonment, and that they carry that through the rest of their lives. That template is formed in very early. Or we shame them. We say, no, you don't
Mm,
get to be. And then that's the template where their anger, their assertiveness is equated with shame. And so
right.
it's not that the parents are evil. I mean, there are plenty of those, but not necessarily. We just don't really know what we're doing as parents. We don't realize how powerful we are. We
Yeah.
didn't have it taught to us. And so those themes just get recycled over and over throughout the generations. And we don't realize like this kid is going to really have a hard time with their anger. And we don't realize how healthy anger can be and needs to be either. So there's just a lot of kind of ignorance, but we learn it usually in our home environments growing up.
And yeah, and one of those ways that we learn is just from what we see.
Yeah.
And if you say so, say if you see your parents managing anger well, let's say,
Yeah.
that becomes the blueprint or the template. But conversely, if it's not, then you think, okay, that's what it is. And we do what we know because we don't know what we don't know, right?
Yeah, and honestly, we will echo our parents even when we hate that we're doing it. We can't stop it because sometimes it's like all yeah, it's we know it, but at such a visceral level, intellectually, we're like, oh my God, I'm being just like my dad. But it's like our little oddly doesn't know the difference, and he is just doing it like it's his
Right.
default. And so we have to kind of unlearn those things from our childhood to integrate with what I call our inner child so we can be on the same page because I think intellectually we're like I don't like that I do that. I don't like that I'm just like my mom or my dad or older brother or whatever, but we're not integrated with our inner child, and so we need to unlearn those things, and that takes time and it takes our own efforts to do that.
No, I can definitely see that. So when as an anger expert, so when individuals come to you, are they looking for something? Like, are you helping to navigate them, or where does your work come in with individuals directly?
Yeah, so I would say the majority of the clients who come to see me have anxiety, um, and I help them get in touch with their anger.
Okay.
So the majority of people who come to see me aren't in touch with their anger. Um, and the few that are, I'm like, yay, you're in a healthier zone, but now we need to like help you channel it out in a healthier way because, but most people with anxiety learned very early that they can't show any anger, that they're not allowed to, that their feelings don't matter. Um, they learned that they're responsible for the parents' feelings. And
Man,
so they're really good at having empathy for everyone but themselves. And so
right.
they are really what I call disintegrated with their own inner child.
And those are some really unhealthy messages that's going through your head. Like, I mean, really, like you can't show emotion. You can't, like, I mean, that goes on and on. And it shows you how much damage we do with our own negative self talk.
Yeah. Well, we parent ourselves the way we were parented, and we
Okay.
just carry that forward. So we continue that, unfortunately. But yeah, if we were raised where, as many of us were, where we are taught, we're conditioned to believe that we're responsible for the parents' feelings, then we intuitively focus on other people with empathy for them. We feel responsible for their feelings, but we cannot be responsible for our own simultaneously. I like to say, you can believe you're responsible for other people's feelings. It's actually impossible, and you will die trying to be responsible, but you also cannot be simultaneously responsible for your feelings. It's an either or.
Okay.
And we are responsible to other people, but never for other people. So we need to unlearn that, and we need to learn to be responsible for our own feelings, and that our feelings matter just like
Mhm.
everyone else's feelings matter.
Yeah, yeah, and it's okay to be angry. It's not a bad thing because anger is a natural human emotion.
Yes,
It's
yes,
just
it
got
is.
it's just got a bad reputation.
Yeah, because it's associated with the big blowouts, right? The big people who are really just loud and even violent, and that we
Hmm.
associate anger with that. And there are people like that for sure. But I would even say those people, some of them are just repressing, holding in their anger until they get that big. So
Right.
that's not an accurate model of their actual anger. And so that's one thing, like when we are when we learn to be responsible for our anger in the moment, if I'm able to say, hey, oddly, that doesn't feel good when you say that kind of hurts, then that keeps us working together, and I'm not going to blow up at you the 10th time you do it. And I also didn't tell you those first 9 times. And that's not fair to you either, right? And now I'm blowing up at you. You didn't even know that my feelings were hurt the first 9 times. I'm exhausted. I'm exacerbated because you've hurt me all these times. But it's not
Right.
fair to anyone if I am not honest with you in the moment and responsible with my anger before it blows up, right?
It's funny as you say that, you just think about how, um, even how many situations um, could be avoided where anger didn't need to come into play if there was the ability to articulate and really express one's emotions clearly and openly and authentically. Um,
Yeah.
yes, it's fascinating actually because you can, if you're able to speak without emotion clearly to get your point across, anger never has to come into play at all.
Yeah, I mean, there is some anger, but you're right that no one feels it, no one hears it. It's like the anger is actually just like a question, like, hey, is everything okay? Because you haven't gotten back to me and it's been, you know, 20 hours or whatever. You're not feeling intimidated by me asking that question, but the question is prompted by some anger, but I'm also like, not going to make an assumption with it. So I'm just
Sure.
going to check in, right? And that's how we learn to be grown up with our anger is like, well, let's actually inquire. Let's not make assumptions because
Hmm.
that again doesn't help anyone when we make assumptions.
It's so funny as you say, like there's all these little things that feed into. So again, the judgments or making assumptions. I just talked about not being able to articulate your feelings or emotions properly. All these things that go wrong that lead to anger, and you just think, well, okay, if that didn't happen, then I probably wouldn't have got angry because that makes sense. Or if I explained what I was doing to this person, they probably understood it better and they wouldn't have got angry. And it just seems that there's so much at play here that needs to sort of fall in line for us not to blow up.
Yeah, and I think the common denominator for all of that to happen, because that seems, I think it's easier said than done. Because I will
Yes.
say these things to people, and they're like, "Oh, that makes complete sense," but I still can't do it, right? And so I think the common denominator for that to happen is we need to trust ourselves. And if we don't trust ourselves, we can't even do that. We can't even say, hey, Audley, what's the deal? This is what you said you do. We can't do that. If we go to a used car sales lot and we can't even be like, hey, I don't want to buy this car and I'm feeling like you're pressuring. We can't even say that. We can't even be true to ourselves if we don't trust ourselves. And I think that is where the shame feeling really comes in because I really equate when we don't trust ourselves, that is because there's some shame there. And that shame usually, again, comes from our childhood, our early
Mm,
childhood, where I like to say shame is the residue. I see it as a residue from, every kind of rejection or abandonment or betrayal from our parents as children. So, and some of it, was actually, the parents' true fault, and some of it just happened and we felt rejected, but the parent didn't mean to do it. So it's not always malicious or intentional,
right.
but we come away with that. So, for example, a really common one is when, let's say, we are 3 years old and our mom has another baby. And if you've ever had a baby, like the world could be on fire and you wouldn't know it because you are day and night taking care of this newborn baby because there's nothing else that you can do. And
Right.
so to think about having a 3-year-old where that 3-year-old had that mom's complete attention and attunement, didn't have to share the mom with anyone. And now that 3-year-old has lost 100% of that immediately. Well, is it the mom's fault? Not really. I mean, it's unfortunately just how life goes, especially when you don't have, more parents or more relatives really helping out. But the child still takes that in and feels like, I guess, I guess I'm not enough. I guess
Right,
something's wrong with
right.
me. I guess I'm not important anymore. And they feel that rejection, and that creates that shame residue that they bring with them into adulthood. Because again, these
Gotcha.
things are so sneaky, they're so insidious
Yep.
in our childhood. And so one of the things I do on my podcast is I lead listeners through exercises that I do with my clients, but I want everyone to be able to do them for themselves. So
Okay.
that's why I have the podcast for everyone to do. But I lead them through one exercise that's called I call it dislodging shame. So
Okay.
where we picture our inner child, let's say it's age 3 and it's little Bronwyn, and I picture her and I look her in the eyes, I get down on her level and I say, little Bronwyn, I know you feel ashamed because you've lost your mom's undivided attunement. And I
Mm,
know that you are just naturally concluding that that's because you're not enough. That's because you're defective somehow.
right.
But I
Right.
need you to see what I see. I need you to know what I know. And the truth is, what mom's loss of attention and attunement is 100% a mom problem, and it is 0% a little Bronwyn problem. And I
Right.
need you to see that you are just as precious and just as good as you ever were. And I see how precious you are.
Yes.
I see how good you are. And that will never change in my eyes. And so we do that for ourselves, and we are able to dislodge that shame, trusting ourselves more. And that actually shows up when we feel that anger. We're able to be more present in the moment and honest and just say, hey, what's up? This is going on. I didn't sign up for this. We're able to be true to ourselves.
Yeah, I do like the honest the heart conversation with your younger self, and showing yourself empathy, compassion, understanding are just really key aspects of this healing process, and that's what it is. It's a process of healing.
Yeah.
So no, I think that, and thanks for kind of walking us through that. Are there any sort of other sort of techniques or exercises that people could do to manage anger?
Yeah. Well,
Well,
for
sorry, no,
anger,
let's stay on the shame path. Actually, let's stay on the shame path.
yeah. So one of the shame ones that I like to do is, I actually stumbled on this myself by accident. About 4 years ago, I was going for a run, and all of a sudden, in my mind's eye, I was at a stoplight, and I closed my eyes, and I'm picturing little Bronwyn, age 10, at the dinner table, and her dad is mocking her because that's what my dad would do every night. He would just make fun of me at the dinner table. And I pictured that, and I pictured my adult self going into that memory and looking my little self in the eye and saying, little Bronwyn, I know how ashamed you feel right now when he mocks you like that every single night. And you know what we're going to do? We're going to put all of that shame in this big cardboard box,
Mm-hmm.
and we're going to return to owner, and we're going to give it back to our dad and say, here you go, dad. You know what? This was never ours. This has always been yours. This is yours. And we're going to return it to owner right now and do with it what you will. But it's not ours. It never was. And so I do that as well for the on the podcast, where I lead people in it's a visual where we're giving that shame back to that person who gave it to us. And it is so, so powerful.
Mm, I can see that. I can certainly see that. Um, I got a question for you.
Yeah.
Why is it not? Uh, why isn't it not a great move to make decisions when they're angry?
Oh, gotcha. Yeah. Well, I mean, I think what you might be getting at is when we're might be triggered, and that's a really important thing to discuss. So when we are triggered, so I'll give you an example.
Mm-hmm.
I even now still get triggered when I am talking to my husband and he breaks eye contact and he like looks at the cat, across the room or whatever. And I get triggered. And so I'm really tempted to get angry with him. But what I have learned to do is just pause and let little Bronwyn in that moment know. And I'll say, little Bronwyn, I know that you're triggered because when we were little, our mom would never make eye contact. She would never, listen to us. She never
Mm.
made us feel like we mattered. She didn't show interest. And I know it's really triggering. And I want to let you know, little Bronwyn, that even if your husband breaks eye contact, I'm still listening because you mattered to me. And what you're
Right.
saying is indeed objectively important. And I am all ears. And that's what I need you to know is I'm right here and I hear what you're saying because it matters to me. And so we can do that for ourselves because when we're triggered, it's our responsibility to manage that.
Okay.
So I cannot, it would be irresponsible for me to put that all on my husband. I can let him know, like, hey, Steve, you know how important it is for me to have your eye contact, but I also have to let him be himself and not have unrealistic expectations on him. And so we are all responsible for our own triggers. When we're triggered, we feel things in the present disproportionately.
Okay.
We, it's okay to feel anger, but we're going to feel way more anger because now we're like we're re experiencing something that was so painful early on that maybe we never allowed ourselves to to feel. And so we need to learn to be that person that heals that for ourselves and not put that on our partner. That's really important.
Yeah. No, I think it is because and you can see I think everyone's sort of been on in those situations before where you get down this slippery slope because of perhaps an action that was maybe viewed a certain way and all of a sudden you're in an argument or fight, you don't know how you got here, kind of a thing.
Yes,
It can happen that quickly, like when did this
yeah,
take place?
yeah,
And there's also thing about the displaced anger. Like
yeah,
I'm angry about this, but I'm really angry about that, and that could
yeah,
have been a week ago
yeah,
for all we know, but it's
yeah.
displaced.
Yeah. And so we could start, let's say I'm in that moment where I'm realizing, I'm just out, like I'm losing control in the present. I can just stop. I can say, you know what? I'm so sorry. I'm realizing I'm really triggered and
Yeah.
I need to go calm down. This is not fair to you and it's not fair to me. Like I'm re-experiencing something and that doesn't belong here and now. So I'm going to go take a walk. I'm going to go like integrate with my inner child and let her know, I'm right here and help her feel validated in her feelings. And so we can do that for ourselves. We could do that, just saying that. I think is the first step is saying, you know what, I'm triggered and that's okay. That's all humans get triggered. That's not shameful. That's just how humans are. We do get triggered and it's okay. We can just own it and be present with that.
Gotcha. Gotcha. Tell me why anger management doesn't work.
Yeah, well, I don't like the term management because that implies anger is bad, first of all, and I'm trying to reverse that, myth that anger doesn't have to be bad at all. Anger is actually really good because it's a signal something needs to be corrected and we can move toward that. Um, so it's not good to override. But I also don't like anger management because it treats the person as if they are the the problem. So
Mm.
let's say oddly, you came to me and I'm your therapist and you say, I need anger management. I have a lot of anger. So if I were to work through an anger management lens, I'd say, okay, well, it sounds like you have a lot of anger, oddly, and let's do some deep breathing. Let me teach you some techniques. But see, the thing is, anger is never intrapersonal. That's assuming it's within you. The problem is
Mm.
intrapersonal.
Okay.
Anger is always
Okay.
interpersonal. So I could very well be gaslighting you.
Yep.
You're the problem. where if I were to say, tell me about your anger, where does it show up? And maybe you have a really toxic, partner. And then I'm like, so I need to see that as a therapist. I need to see the whole big picture, the
Right.
whole context. And
Right.
then I need to validate you and say, wow, that person sounds really like dysfunctional. Are you aware of how bad it is?
Hmm.
So that's, yeah, I don't want to manage it because it's actually a signal to give you wisdom. Like this person's really bad and I need to have a boundary with that person.
It's oftentimes, and I've heard and I've read and I believe truly that the emotions that we experience, they're often a gateway to what's going on inside. Like they're a form
Yeah.
of information, and so
Yes.
if
Yes.
if anger is being experienced or it's appearing, that's a signal to get the show and start digging a little bit to figure out what is happening there. Oftentimes. Um, I've got nothing to back with others coming from my perspective, but often I think we'll see the presented anger, but it's not the real issue. There's something deeper, right? So what's presented isn't always what's really, happening for that individual, and that's where the digging starts, I believe.
Yes. So we say that anger is a secondary emotion. So there is, you're right, underneath the anger, the primary emotions I have found are usually a feeling of like betrayal,
Okay.
ab- abandonment, like emotional abandonment or rejection. So getting back to those three, and those are kind of all one and the same. They're just different aspects of the same thing. Um, and we mainly feel that not at the person who cuts us off on the freeway because they can't really betray us. We don't know them. They're a stranger. They can make us angry for a split second, but to really hurt us, it's someone close to us. It's someone who we have very high expectations of. So again,
Yes.
it's usually a partner or a parent. Those are the main two. Um, so, or someone just that we see as like a parental figure, like that we really trusted, someone we really trust. So when we feel betrayed, when we feel rejected by them, that's what it really comes down to. And if that is if we can be aware of that, if we can move from the anger and just be vulnerable with ourselves and say, you know what, Bronwyn, of course you feel e- emotionally abandoned when, this person they didn't check up on you when you told them you were struggling.
Right. Right.
That's okay to feel, so we can get down to the root and address the root and say, you know what do you need? Because this is not the first time this has happened with this person. So maybe we need to kind of like have some distance from this person. Maybe they're not as consistent and trustworthy as we thought, right? So we can work with that if we're in a relationship with a partner. We can express that vulnerable feeling underneath. They can work with that, but usually they can't work with the anger. So for me, with my husband, if I'm able to say, Steve, when you look away while I'm talking, I feel rejected. If I'm able to
Right.
say that instead of showing the anger that's kind
Yep.
of
Yep.
masking it, we can work things through much, much better.
Yeah. 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 Those ever powerful I statements, right? I feel, I think, I
Yeah.
believe it matters.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
It's just so funny. Again, just it's just a little thing. It's just a little thing that can make the biggest difference in all that we've talked about thus far, which is, I think, eye opening for some, right? And but it really shows you just how fragile it can be, right? If you're not being mindful and careful and
Yeah.
empathetic, if you will, towards how someone else is
Yeah.
feeling. And so, yeah, no,
Yeah. And towards how we feel. And then,
absolutely.
honestly, anger at ourselves, I think, is the biggest contributor to mental illness,
Mm,
and probably somatic illnesses too, is anger at ourselves. We often are much more forgiving and empathic of other people than we are of ourselves. And we will beat ourselves up and we need to forgive ourselves. And actually, that's an exercise I want to do for my podcast. I haven't done yet. Um, but leading ourselves in an exercise to forgive ourselves. So it could be from 10 years ago, forgive our younger self from, and when I do that with people, when I lead my clients in that, I'll do something like I'll have you look at Audley from 10 years ago and say, Audley, younger Audley, I really want to hate you right now. I want to hate you for making that really horrible decision. But, I know you pretty well, and I'm also able to take into account that you were conditioned from a very young child to be really blind to a lot of things. And so when you made that decision, you really were blind to, that this person, a lot of red flags that you saw. You were really blind to that. You really didn't realize how much you matter. You really
Mhm.
didn't realize, how your feelings and needs matter too. And so because of that blindness, I see why you made that bad decision and I forgive you. And so when we do that for ourselves, when we take in the whole big picture, we can really forgive ourselves. And it's really powerful.
No, I love it. I love it. I love it. And Bronwyn, again, I think the points that you've raised and the insight you provide is fantastic, because it's really reframing and reshaping how we view anger and how we perceive anger. And I think that's a really important starting point, because then we don't have to manage it, right? We can work through it. But more importantly, but acknowledging his presence, what's happening for us, and we can do that again. And I don't want to make it sound simple, because that's a big if we can do that, because it's harder.
Yeah.
I don't. So I'm not saying this is, hey, no problem, do then just do it like Nike.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
it's a lot more than that. So I want to be respectful of that, and the journey that individuals are going through. But if we can, I think it's a huge difference maker, and really can do a lot in terms of how we manage our relationships, whether they're personal, professional, our relationship with ourselves. Because sometimes we beat up ourselves too. We get mad at ourselves about things that we perceive or judge or don't give ourselves credit for stuff. And so I think all that to say is, I think it's a very, very important topic. And thank you for the insights and what you've shared today. If listeners wanted to connect with you, learn more about you, or hear the podcast, where can we send them?
Yeah. So my podcast is called Angry at the Right Things, and it's found wherever you subscribe to your podcasts. I also have nowadays I'm posting my podcast on YouTube as well. And then I'm on, some of the social media sites as well.
Good, good. Well, we'll make sure that the appropriate links will be in the contact details as well. So again, Robin, thank you. This has been great. I appreciate the insights. Thank you, and I appreciate you for being a guest on the Audacious Living podcast.
Thank you, Audley. I appreciate you.
Thank you. Back we are here on the podcast, and in our chat with Bronwyn, she emphasized the importance of recognizing anger not as a negative emotion, but as a vital indicator that something needs our attention. She shared that many of us struggle with anger due to childhood experiences that taught us to suppress this emotion, leading to feelings of shame and disconnection from our true selves. By engaging in inner child work, we can begin to heal those old wounds, fostering a sense of trust in ourselves. What truly resonated with me during our conversation was Bronwyn's perspective on using I statements as a tool for effective communication. This approach not only helps us articulate our feelings without projecting anger onto others, but it also fosters understanding and connection in our own relationships. And I just so loved how she encouraged listeners to embrace self-forgiveness, recognizing that we all are human and deserving of compassion for our past mistakes. If you found Bronwyn's insights as enlightening as I did, I would encourage you to connect with her directly. You can find her podcast, Angry at the Right Things, wherever you listen to your favorites. She also is on social media, and links will be provided in the show notes for you to easily reach out and explore more of her work. Be sure to check out Bronwyn's website for additional resources, including workshops and exercises designed to help you navigate your relationship with anger. Bronwyn often shares exclusive content and special offers for her listeners that you won't want to miss. So definitely tap in to what she's got going, because it's great stuff. Thank you for tuning in to another edition of the Audacious Living podcast. I hope you found the conversation as inspiring and insightful as I did. If you've enjoyed this episode, please take a moment to like, follow, subscribe, and share with others who may benefit from these discussions if you haven't already done so. Your support helps us continue to grow and reach even more listeners on their journey to living audaciously. Until next time, stay safe, be kind, show love to one another, and be audacious.
You've been listening to the Audacious Living Podcast, hosted by Audley Stevenson. If you enjoyed what you heard, be sure to like, subscribe, and share. Until next time, be audacious.